Right. So the first page. So you have to have Maven in your computer, and you need some sort of ID. It doesn't matter which one you use, but you do need ID to be productive. So if you don't have it, you need to like start installing it right now. Okay. And so with that said, hopefully everyone has that. So I'll get. So with that basics in mind, so if you come to the Jenkins website, at the top page, you see this section called Extend Jenkins. And that's where, this is essentially like a portal page that links to all the other development kind of resources inside Jenkins. So in this case, what we'll be going through is essentially this plugin tutorial. So this shows you all the basics of starting from scratch to get to the point of being able to, they go through the edit, build, debug, package cycle. So that's the idea. So there's a little bit of settings that you have to add to your M2 settings XML. So basically, that step is explained in this section. So you can just copy this stuff into your POM. I'm sorry, in your local Maven settings file. And right, I think that's something that needs to happen. And then the next step is to go to the skeleton generator. So it's in the plugin generator.jenkinsci.org. So like you could say like a foobar.plugin, and then click the generate button. And then it'll think a while, and then it'll download the like initial skeleton file that contains the basic stuff that you need. So say in my case it's a Hoover plugin, so I would come back to Hoover plugin, and then this would be like my entire source tree. Right, so let's get to that point at least. So again, the website that you want to get to is the plugin. Well, let's see, how do I do this? It's called plugin generator.jenkinsci.org. I'm not sure what's the best way to, maybe if I write down like that and then make it available somewhere. Hopefully that would be readable enough. And then this is come on, how do I resize this guy? Okay, that's better. If anything doesn't work, let me know.
So no blanks are allowed. No blanks are allowed.
No. I'm sorry, no what?
No blanks, no spaces.
Yeah, so the plugin name is, so this is like the artifact ID in Maven, so you can't have any tricky characters like dot or what else you can't have. I think it's dot, white space, brackets, that sort of things. Did it work okay, or if anyone need help? Who's already done?
Other question before, does everyone who needs a network cable has a network cable? Because otherwise I have a mini switch.
Yes, I take a network cable.
Me too. Okay, then is someone, then I get a USB power.
USB power. I mean, I can give it if you.
Jetzt hier gerade über das Speaker. Ich denke erst eins. Ich denke, ich lasse zwei auf. Das geht leider.
please can someone put that into the switch? On the website there's already one. And then I can use these 3 other cables. Hopefully.
There's problems now. Just there has been no settings XML in at the place trained here, and I just created it. So I just put this example as the new settings XML at the right place, just at the root of the repository, or the repository here is located at the same place where this file is located now. So it must be the right place, but now I'm getting error just executing this first example command from the command line. I get build failure with error, could not find gold crate and found.
Okay, so it probably isn't picking up the settings file. You can merge this with your existing settings. Like
I haven't found it, so I haven't find my settings file.
You have not. Okay, well, let me come over and see. Oh, sorry.
It hasn't been there. I just expected to find it here.
Right.
But this has been nothing, just a repository. The repository is here, so that must be the right place, because I mean that's the only repository. It's everything download here. But now, so I just created a new file.
Okay. Yeah,
but
so
I'm getting this. So.
Right. So I think what's missing is like you got the 2 commands typed in one go. So this is. So you should just do one like that, and then that'll be there. You go. Yeah. Or then like, if you use this online generator, it sort of automates that initial step. So are people okay with so far? Like, should I go to the next step? So let's see. So now that I have the stuff generated. Actually, this is like supposed to be a very typical Maven project. So you have like a POM XML, and then you have the small number of files. So the first thing you want to do is to open this project in IDE. So if you I guess I use IntelliJ, so I know how to do that sort of things. But if you're using Eclipse. I guess if you don't know how to import a Maven project in your IDE, then there's a bit of instruction described down below here. So I believe the IntelliJ users could just open the POM file. The Eclipse users, I believe they have 2 choices. They could either use the M2 Eclipse plugin, or they could use the this Eclipse to generate like a standard Java project type. From what I've been told, I don't personally use Eclipse too much, but from what I've been told by other people, this works. This is easier. I should say this is trouble-free than empty Eclipse, because the empty Eclipse still behaves somewhat funnily in various situations. So if you aren't unsure what to do, this might be the better way to go, this command. Otherwise, if you know what you're doing, just do what you normally do, and then I think you should be good. And I believe when you do it for the first time, it'll download quite a few amount of files, all the dependencies in the core and so on. So this might take a while.
So you're using IntelliJ here?
Yeah. So while hopefully, so you want to run like this. Okay, so you want to open the IDE, and then if you are done with that, you also want to like a Maven, let's say like a package. And again, this will also on my machine, right? I probably have enough stuff, or maybe I don't, but enough stuff to go through this quickly. But the chances are good that in your environment you have to download a whole bunch. So let that go. Let's get that going in the background, and then let me sort of walk through some of the basics in the code. so the skeleton that we generate is like a hello world. So this adds what we call as a builder. Let's see, maybe you can make the font a little bigger, and then suppress. So the general pattern in writing plugins in Jenkins is finding an extension point, which is what's exposed by the layer underneath as a pluggability point. And then so find those extension points and then implement this. So the extension points are normally like a Java, like abstract Java class or interface. And these things are marked by this marker interface called extension point. So when you see it, for example, one way to find out what the available extension point is if you look for the references of look where this type is implemented, you see like all these different guides, which is basically what you could plug into. Another good point to start is, again, if you come back to this Jenkins Wix page, and then there's a list of all the extension points that's generated from the machines. So these are all so the first section is all the extension points that's defined in the core, and then there's like quite a few number of these. And then followed by the extension points that's exposed by some of the plugins. So let's say, I'm not entirely sure what are here. So this one I know, for example, in the Git plugin, you could control which commit is going to be built next. So that's controllable by this extension point. Again, if you click this, you'll jump to like a little bit of documentation. Not too much at this level, but if you go to the Java.org, hopefully they do better. And then also, you can click this implementation link, which shows you all the known implementation of this across the public Jenkins plugins. So often it's easy to, often it really helps to look at some of the implementations, not just the contract, to find out how you'd hook into it. And then, so this is another way this page I think is often very useful for that purpose. So so now coming back to this Hello World plugin, the one that we are hooking into is called the Builder, which is like the one that shows up in the main build section. And then so, well, actually I should run it. So if I run, so hopefully once you get the build successfully completed, now you could run Maven HPI :run, the Hackathon plugin :run. And then this would launch Jenkins within the Maven with the plugin that you're developing in place. And so this is normally the mode in which you play with the work in progress plugins. And that failed because I have that port occupied by something else. So by default, it wants to open the port at 8080, but if you want to change it, you could specify something else. Let me make a font a little bigger. So let me try this one more time. Another good trick is to launch this with Maven debug so that you could attach a debugger. Right? When you need to trace the code, that's often convenient to do so. So now I think it's starting. And then there we go. So now if I access to localhost 8080, and then the Jenkins is deployed on /Jenkins. And so that's the this is my local Jenkins instance that started by Maven that contains my Hello World plugin as an example. So let's see, I create a new job. So let's see, I create a new job. It's a freestyle. And then you do, so in the build section, you have Hello World Builder. So this is the code that we just added. So hello to TNG Groove. And then if I do save and then build, and that should, so what the code is doing actually, I should show you the code. So there's, as you saw, there's one configuration entry called name, and then what the code is going to be doing is when we actually run it, it should say the hello. So that's all there is to it, and then it actually does work. So in terms of looking at the code, So this extends from the extension point called builder, and as we saw, the builder extension point is for adding stuff in this like main build sections. So things like the shell script and all the other stuff will derive from here. Right? The one that you see in the core Jenkins, like the shell, the coding batch file, running Ant, things like that is all from here. And then, so the builder extension point mainly has just one method, the perform, which is what gets invoked when the build gets to the certain point. So in this case, we're essentially just saying the hello plus name. So we get a number of parameters here. If you look at the Java docket, it hopefully explains what these guys do. So this is the build. So this object represents like an in-progress build. That guy is for, this guy is for launching a new process on behalf of the build. And then the listener is basically like hooked up to the console and some other stuff. So again, all we are doing is like actually writing to the console. So that's all there is to it. So that perform part is pretty simple. For the builders, there are a number of extension points. Well, let's see. So the way, how do I do this? So the way Jenkins discover all the extension points is by creating, the way the Jenkins discover extension points is by initially creating singleton instances of the classes that's marked as @extension. So this index is, and this annotation gets indexed at the compile time, and at the runtime, the system is going to look for all the things that instantiates this. And then, so in this case, so we have this descriptor, which I'm going to explain in a short while. And that's how Jenkins discovers that, oh, there's a new implementation of builder called Hello World. And then so that's the rest of the hookup is going to happen. So, at the fundamentally at the foundation of the extensibility layer is this ability to discover these singleton instances that have extensions. Now, there are some extensions that are like really essentially singletons, but there are some others that actually like needs to be instantiated with different configuration parameters, like in this case of Hello World Builder, right? For every project that configures the Hello World Builder, or we could also obviously configure 2 of those inside the single project. And so when we do that, so there are multiple instances of these guys get created. So for these, the common pattern for these extension point that needs to be configured by the user is like there's always some user interface fragment, like the one we saw in the configuration page. Like this fragment this fragment is coming from like this extension point, right? And then the user would type in some value into this form, and based on the value in the form, we create an instance. And then, or when the user comes back to this configuration form, we look at the configured, like the properties of this instance, and then fill in this form, right? So there is this like essentially cycle of things. So we have this instance, we have this like a form view that kind of needs to go back and forth. So for these guys, we have what is called, there's a common pattern. So this is a common enough pattern in various places in Jenkins. So we have this 2 class called describable, which represents the instances that get created from like a UI and other stuff. And then also the corresponding descriptor, which is like the thing, which is a singleton that explains what this extension point is about. Why is that an error? Okay, I don't know what that means, but what was it saying? Yeah, so this that explains what kind of extension point is available, what form it is, and so on. Because for us to render this form, we need to be able to do this without having any instance, right? Having any instance of Hello World Builder in the beginning. So for the system to know that your extension point is called, say, Hello World, and that it has these like form entries, and that it's got all these help pages and so on, it needs to have it needs to get like a help. So the relationship between describable and descriptor is like a class and instance, class and object in Java, right? You have to, the class object is there to describe, it's like a metadata of the instances, right? So does that make sense? So you're trying to do something here, the similar thing here, because in case of Jenkins, we need a lot more than just like a name of the methods and so on. So those stuff is defined here. So the convention, these things are glued together by convention. So if you see existing Jenkins code, as in the case of Hello World Builder, you see these descriptors defined as a nested static class. So the outermost class in this case is Hello World Builder. That's implementing a describable of interface at some point. So if you look at the type hierarchy, well, I guess this is not really doing a good job. But if you look at how the builder is defined, builder extends from the builds. So there it is. So the builder is a describable type. So that's that's saying that this extension point gets created every time user configures something, and then. So that's the outermost class, and then inside it, you see this static, public static. You normally don't want final unless you care about those things. Descriptor class. The name doesn't really matter, but this when because it's got this extension annotation, this guy gets discovered at the runtime, and because this is defined as an inner class of Hello World Builder, it knows it figures out that it's describing the Hello World Builder. We could have explicitly specified this by passing what we are explaining like that. But it's just easier to just let the system figure that automatically as opposed to like you're typing it. Right? It's a bit more dry in this way. So the descriptor is always available. And the describable gets created as the user configures it. So that's sort of like a basic life cycle of things. And then so the configuration form, so the another important part is like how to contribute the configuration UI. And then this is where this is where the infamous jelly will come in. So there's basically a number of tag libraries defined inside the core that creates things in quote unquote the right fashion. So the general pattern is like you have this like what's a good example here? So so the general pattern is like you have rows after rows of things. Like here you have like a one entry of the data. Here's another entry of the data. And then here's another one, and so on. So generally speaking, in the configuration form, you see something like this, that you have this entry tag, which creates like a one row of data. And then that it has a title, which is what you see in, the title is what you see in the caption. And then the field, so this matches to the code. And then this is how, because there's an automatic data binding that happens between your instance and the form field. So when we say field, so this is basically saying it's going to match up to the name field inside your builder class. So to fill in to populate the form from the current value, it comes to this get name property to obtain the current value. And when the user submits a form, it comes back to the constructor. And again, there is a parameter called name, so that's where the value gets injected. And then so that's how the life cycle works. Does that make sense? It's somewhat non-standard, but it works. And then finally, so inside the entry, we have like the control. It explains like what kind of things we'll be asking.
One question, the name config jelly is by convention?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so this is also another convention. So if you look at that's a good point. So if you look at the fully qualified name of the package, that's the name of the class. Right? So if you have like org Jenkins CI plugin foobar, the Hello World Builder, so that's like basically everything in this package is like the associated views and related information about the Hello World Builder. So that's also hooked together by convention. Right. So yeah. So inside the entry we have a number of different control types. So the text box is as we saw. But for example, if you run the password, password. And you'll see that suddenly all the text field gets masked because now it's password. Doesn't make much sense in this case, but that's sort of how it works. And then if you go back to the Jenkins wiki, there's a documentation about all the available tags, tag leave references. So these are the ones defined in Jenkins. If you look at that XML a bit more carefully, this guy says F. The prefix F is bound to /lib/form. So these are like form-related tag libraries. And then so if you come back to this documentation and then /lib form, you see all the available tags and then what they do. So with that said, this is not this is one of the area where I guess the people suffers, and then so we'd be more than happy to help. The other thing in this, when it comes to this, is they're in the development mode. If you go back to the top page, you see these UI samples, and this explains some of the common UI patterns that you might want to do. So let's say there's a auto-completion enabled text box. So like if I start typing in C, like you get the available state of the US, and then so here's the source file. So index jelly, you see, so there's really nothing different about this jelly file. So you have the same text box, but what makes this work is if you look at the source code, again, you see the similar pattern, like you see there you go, the descriptor, just like Hello World Builder, but the idea is there's this like another method on the descriptor called the do autocomplete state. So again, so all these things, this is also wired together in the naming convention. So you see like a do autocomplete XYZ, where this is the name of the field, and then so we get the current value injected as a parameter, and then we return all the available candidates into the object, and then like the rest happens kind of like automatically. So if you look at the
this has to be a static list, or it can be also an array list, for example.
So if you look at the code a little carefully, what we expect is what the system expects is that there be a function called that has this more or less this signature, and then let's see, a function that has this name. So the way we look at is so the descriptor, so that text box tag, among other things, what it does is to see if there's any method name called do autocomplete blah blah blah, and the blah 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 matches the field name. So in this case, in the jelly file, we have a state field, right? So it's checking if there's a do autocomplete XYZ, state, which is exactly the method we have. And then also it expects it to return this auto-completion candidates instance, which basically is just like a glorified list, I believe. It's basically like a glorified list. So the job of this function is to populate that list. And the fact that this is using like a static final field for remembering state is just an implementation detail. So we could have just as easily wrote like anything else in these 3 lines, and then that would have been fine. Yeah, so to answer your question, it doesn't have to be static field. It could be, anything else. So
How much of the plugin can you change without restarting Jenkins? Because you changed
yes.
export field.
Right. So that's a good question. The views and anything that's not code, it's automatically reloaded. On the other hand, the classes, because it's just the way the Java virtual machine works. For you to reload the class, you need to be attaching a debugger, and then then you can recompile the class and then inject a new class, right? So long as you're not changing the signature, which is one of the Java debugger restrictions. So it doesn't do any additional reloading beyond that. So in fact, like the whole thing is, one of the things in Jenkins, you'll notice that unlike the typical web app, like everything is quite a whole lot more stateful. So like this instance, right, if you're used to the typical Java EE app, these things won't like survive that long, right? Like you persist that into the database, and the request comes in, like you grab it from the JPA or something, and then you use it, and at the end of the request essentially got thrown away. But that is not the case here, actually. This instance gets created when you configure the project, and then it stays there, and then for essentially like until it gets configured for the next time. So we can't really reload the classes at the runtime very easily, which is one of the pain. Although there is a JLevel integration in Jenkins. And I believe they have the open source license available to anyone hacking on the OSS code. So if you just fill a form to them, and then you can get this, you can use this, and then this would substantially increase the number of things you could reload without restarting Jenkins. So that's that. What else? Yeah, so I guess I was at the UI sample. So there's a number of other the things. We obviously need to add a lot more here. There's not enough samples here, but you get some ideas of like what you could do. So that's hopefully is useful in getting the sense of like what you can do. And again, we'd love to hear from the feedback about like this is where if people get stuck on certain things, we'd love to hear more about that so that we could add more documentations and so on. So that I think is enough for the basics. I think. Anything else I could? Did Maven HP run work for you, or were you able to like touch a few things and then see if that worked? Like if I change good morning, this to good morning, I can run this with Maven debug, and then attach a debugger. So if I run this with debugger attached, and build it here. Let's see. So I should be able to make a break at this line. So now it's got to this line, and I can step execute the code, and yeah. So again, anyway, yeah. So I think that's basically it. Anything I could answer in general? Yeah, it's kind of getting warm. That's true.
Das war nicht perfekt mit der Klimaanlage, aber vielleicht ist sie besser als...
Aber ich versuche mal vorbeizukommen.
Allerdings passt. Ich weiß nicht, wie die Rechnung finden muss, wenn du es nicht schaffst.
Das haben wir sogar Brennwarnziel.
Mal später.
Ja,
Na dann, auf die US kommen jetzt.
Oh, I should, yeah, so I guess, well, yeah, I should mention one more thing, that is the persistence. So we store things in XML, as you know, and then that's acting sort of like Java serialization. And then so it automatically looks at your field and persists those. So in this case, like if you go look at the configuration file, you see in the work directory is where the temporary Jenkins home is. So this is where the stuff maps to. So it's hopefully pretty straightforward. So that's basically that's basically the whole life cycle of the object. So when Jenkins would start, we load the jobs, and so we parse this XML, and just like Java serialization, we magically instantiate the class without calling a constructor, filling all these values, actually invoke the same Java serialization callbacks like a read object and read replace and all the other bunch of things we have, right? And then the object gets instantiated, and then when the user comes in and open the configuration form, we look at these, we use these getters to fill in the form. When they get submitted, then we use this constructor with the data-bound constructor notation to inject the stuff and create a new instance, and then that's how the life cycle completes. All right, so was that useful? Any questions that I could help? Anyone stuck? Yeah.
It was maybe difficult when the API interface is changing. Is there some basic solution you recommend?
You mean like what's the backward compatibility story on these things? Right. So one of the reasons most extension points are defined as abstract classes so that we could add new callbacks or new methods on these extension points without breaking existing plugins. So if you see like a builder is abstract class precisely because of that, and over time we've been adding a number of additional methods. For example, for this guy, this monitor thing wasn't originally there. So there's like a default implementation provided. Or so it's this like a pre-build which gets invoked. So sometimes this makes it a little bit confusing which one you need to extend. Like not everything you need to implement is abstract. So but once you play it with a little bit, I think you'll discover. Yeah.
So that you explain to me, but I think more at the point of the persistence of data.
Right. So the keeping yes, for your, well, so it depends on your plugins. Like if you're the only one, right. So I think what you're asking is, as you evolve the classes, like how can you maintain the data compatibility, right? Right. So that's a good question. And sometimes, depending on the circumstances, you might not need to worry too much about that. Like if you're the only one who's using it, and then like if it breaks the compatibility, that's not a big deal. But if you want to care about those things, there's a number of techniques. I wonder if there's a wiki page that we wrote about that. Let's see. So let's see if you can find it. Evolving data. Right, there you go. So the technology we call for persisting with XML is called Xstream. And so there's a section called retaining backward compatibility. So this talks about various techniques you could use to retain to evolve the code without breaking things. So there's like a few scenarios we wrote. And then if you look at some of the long-living plugins, then you see a lot of examples, like the Git plugin, for example. This has been there's been a number of evolution here. So if you look at this guy, so this guy is, so the read resolve is like when this gets invoked when we get loaded from the disk, right? So for example, there's a it's got a number of deprecated fields that define that's marked. So it's marked as transient because when we are saving it, we don't want to save it. But if the data file contains this entry, we want to read it back. So the source. So just to make this a bit more clear, in the Git SCM, the source property was originally used to represent the Git URL to check out the repository from. And then later it got, like it wanted to support multiple Git repositories to check out from. So a single string became insufficient. So the way we did it is by marking it as deprecated because we are not using it anymore, but left the field as transient so that if the file contains it, we could read it back. And then in the read resolve, which gets called right after the object gets deserialized, if the source isn't null, then we try to sort of use that value and then recreate our same data in the newer structures. And then, so that's how we generate it. But so that's more of a, I think this is more of an advanced topic. So initially, I don't think you need to worry too much about that. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Maybe okay. If I do a bit more like a quick overview of various key classes around Jenkins. So generally speaking, you have we have this domain object structured, kind of like how the URLs in Jenkins are structured. So at the top level, you have like this Jenkins object, which is the root of. This is like a humongous class that's becoming out of control, but. Anyway, so this is the class that's sitting at the root, and then for each project we have a class called job, and then this is like a hierarchical class. So you have depending on the type of job, you have a number of subtypes. So there's like let's see, so the freestyle project is this guy, and then there's like a Maven project type, and then there's a matrix project and so on. So you see these things, and then inside each project, we have these builds. So these builds are called run, and then again, if you look at the type hierarchy, they sort of form a very similar, in fact, the parallel type hierarchy to the project. So if you look at like a freestyle build, you see this like a bit weird parameterization that sort of pairs those project type and build type together. And so that's how you could tell which one corresponds to which. And then so these, basically like everything you see in here, for example, this is a project top page. So everything you see in here is more or less inside that project class. And if you click one build, like everything you see here is more or less in that build class. So it's hopefully it's not too hard to figure out where things are. And all these objects generally expose the kind of things, the kind of thing you can do with it. So like you could say, like you can call the freestyle project.delete, and then that, delete the project, obviously. Or you could, what else can you do? Like on the freestyle project, you could say get builders. And so that gives you a list of builders that's configured on that project. So again, hopefully not very straightforward. So that this is one of the upside of having a stateful server. And then, so that I think those are probably three key classes: the Jenkins, so the top level guy, and then the freestyle project, it's the job. The job and run, and this parallel type hierarchy. And the other common things is some abstractions around remoting. So you hopefully already know that in Jenkins you could add more slaves, right, to get the builds done. And when that happens, for example, this hello world builder is already actually like a correct remoting. Well, I guess it doesn't actually touch any slaves, but this works correctly with the remote build as well. So that when the build happens remotely, what happens is that actually the guy who is coordinating the whole execution is still on the master. So this method gets invoked on the master. But there are a number of lower level abstractions that hides you from the fact that the build is happening remotely or locally. So let's say the launcher is capable of like forking a new process. So if I do like a launch, so this gives you like a launch. So the commands. So this is like a builder pattern. This is like a proc starter is a builder pattern to create a new command. So I could say command echo hello, like a cat. I don't know, let's see, host or something, and then like a launch. How do I start this? And join, I guess. Then like I get the response code, and then if it's non-zero, then I would say something like that. It's error. No. So this is forking a process, right? So, but this launcher, when the build is running remotely, it's sort of, you get the implementation that's correctly capable of launching stuff on the other side, and then so it works automatically. The other key abstraction for the handling remoting transparently is called file path. So this is like this is like a Java I/O file, but abstracted away a little bit to support remoting. So, for example, one of the things we could do is, we can look at the workspace of the build, which could be on the remote computer, right? And then we could say, so this offers a whole bunch of commands. Like I could say, so the child method is to refer to the relative path. I could say, so this would represent the foo.text of inside the workspace, and then I could say, I can write a string to this file in whatever encoding that I care about, and then this also works correctly even if it's remote. So I think that's the, if you look at this file path, there's like a tremendous number of methods available to do basic file operations, to archiving, to just about anything else you would want to. So sometimes we use this you can also use this to copy between like a local and remote. And so the workspace might be remote, but if you look at the other things, like I get artifacts directory, So that's a local file. That's always on the master. So we could sort of turn this into a file path by taking a file that, so this is local, and then that guy is the foo. The WS is remote, so I could say like a copy entire workspace recursively into local, and then if this is between remote transform, local and remote, then we could the thing comes from slave to master. So that's the basics. All right, I think that's good enough for now. Shall we head back to the main room and?
I think it's I know what is local on the slave and what is on the master. So they're just things you call them and they deliver different things. So how can I know what is local and what is remote?
Well, so generally, so the point of file path is that so that you didn't care about it. You don't need to care about that. But some of the methods. So the Jenkins, most of the heavyweight domain objects like Jenkins and certainly all the jobs and the build and so on, they all live in masters. So some of the methods like this get artifacts directory, which is the directory where the artifacts are stored, it's always guaranteed to be on the master. So that's why this method returns file as opposed to file path. Right? So because it's known to be on the master. So you sometimes see that. But again, for the purpose of copying files around and so on, it's often easier to use file path. So that's how I do it. Another, I guess, the bit more advanced operation is sometimes instead of shipping the data across the network, it's easier to ship the code over to the slave to get some intense computation done, and then only bring back a summarized result, right? That's because you only have one master. You have so many slaves. Wherever you could delegate the computation to the slave, it's better to do so. So there's a way to do that. So for example, there's a couple of different ways to do it, but the one way to do it is if you can call this act on the file path, and what it does is you could call this callable object, and then oops. So this is parameterized on two things. The one is the return type, and then the other is let's say, so one is return type, and then the other is the kind of exception you can throw. And all this predates the Java 5, so this is a separate callable. It's not Java util concurrent callable. It's a Hudson remoting callable. It's a little bit different. But anyway, so you could have this, you can have a disclosure, and then you could do any computation here, and then do some silly things and then, so this computation would run on the slave, and then you get the result back as the value on the master. Does that make sense? So this is sending a closure to the remote slave and then get that executed, and then so that's that. Another way to look at this operation is there's another overloaded version of the act that takes the file callable, not just the callable, and when you do it, you see that so this guy doesn't take the exception of the parameterization. But you take this file as a parameter, so you get the file as a parameter. So this is this F, right? So this WS variable represents a possibly remote file. The notion of act is to ship the computation where the file is, so that file is now accessible locally as F. So let me to illustrate the point. Let me make this a field of text. So now I could read by using standard. Apache Commons IO utils, I could, or was it file utils? I can never remember these guys. So read file to string. So we can now read back this content into string if you wanted to, and then so get the string back, and then so now we have file accessible. Now this is obviously kind of redundant because if you just wanted to read the text, we could just read the text to string without using this lengthy code. But you can imagine you can do all sorts of computation here. For example, when we parse the JUnit reports, we do something like this, and then so the XML parser runs on the slave, and we only get the terminalized results. So this is then all the so that's yeah. So that's so this is often you see in various plugins to do stuff. Okay.
Can you give a little bit short introduction how to unit test plugin?
Test, yes. How to write a test? Good question. I should probably have it in this here as well. So the you can there's a two different general modes of testing you could do. One is like a mocking various Jenkins classes to do some like a highly targeted testing. And then I'm not too familiar with that. It's actually done by a guy in Hamburg called Krzysztof Kuczynski, and so I need to learn from him how to do it. The other one is more like an integration test-like thing. You get like a whole Jenkins running inside the test process, and then you basically emulate whatever you want to do. So I mostly do this like an integration style test. And then, so the mocking, I think hopefully there's a bit about that mock stuff, or maybe not. Right, so there's the unit test section here. Okay, so all right, so this looks pretty comprehensive. So you have some section about mocking. So okay, so it looks like we've been using Mockito. So I'm not too familiar with like how some of these tests are written, but I'm sure like some other guys can probably show you. So let me show you the integration-ish test. So I'm going to, I guess, create a package and create like a foo test, and then so this is using JUnit 4. So you have like a Jenkins rule. Let's see what I'm supposed to create. Yeah, so something like that. And then replace test 1. Test, and then so this Jenkins rule is a pretty heavyweight stuff, but it essentially launches. So it uses the embedded Jetty inside the VM, and then it deploys Jenkins, and then it also deploys a plugin, and then so it gives you some of the key objects. So if I do like a Jenkins, so this is like a root of the Jenkins. Actually, Jenkins well. So I'm just being lazy here. And then like I can create a new project. So most of the operation is exposed from here. So I could it's actually, so there's also a number of other convenience methods on this Jenkins tool. So one of the very common things is like I create a new freestyle project. So I create a project, and then I'm going to add a new hello world builder that says the name would be like I guess the Munich, and then I can schedule the build, and then even though it's deprecated, it's test, so it's okay. I'm going to, well, maybe not. Well, I think this is fine. Actually, I need to use 2 because I want to get this. So this gives me a future to wait for. So this is like essentially just a future. So I can get these. So I can wait for the completion of the build, and then if the build is complete, I can make sure that the let's see what was the proper way to do this. It's like make sure that the build was successful, and then the other thing I wanted to make sure is that inside the log file, inside the log, this contains hello Munich, right? So that would be basically a test. And then so I could just run this guy. Yeah, so now I'm compiling. Oh, that didn't work. Why? Oh, yes. I never understood why it needs to be public, but just rerun the test here. And so it takes a bit of time because it's loading the whole thing and whatnot. But so there you go. The other common thing I do is if I run interactive break, it actually stopped the test right there, and then I could interactively look at this instance from the browser. So let's do that. If I run the test, There's another test is running, and then it's stopped at this place. So I could cut and paste this thing, and then if I run it locally, so you see that this is a test project we created. And if you look at the configuration section, you see that they manually added builders. So that's how you could.
Yeah.
So that's the basic test story. And then as I showed you, in the wiki page, there's a bit more extensive documentation about various testing techniques that you could use. All right. Okay, so let's get back. I think that's enough of me talking. So. All right, thank you.
Thank you.